Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder it's time to have a look at another devblog, and this is for the new location in update 1.87. Alaska is coming to the game in a very, well, at least odd way to me. Whenever I've thought of Alaska, I've thought of quite a rural setting, very much more like Volkalamsk, and from all of the weird and wonderful TV shows, mainly based around policemen over here, like the cop shows, normally that's kind of what it shows in Alaska. Well, instead what we're getting is what seems to be a rural area of Alaska which has been fully urbanized. And this just sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? At least to me. So obviously I don't know a lot about Alaska, but there is urban areas, and for me, when I have a look at this map, one of the things I wouldn't say is it's a small Alaskan town. Maybe this is just a cultural difference, but a small town for me is something that doesn't have skyscrapers or doesn't have large apartment blocks or anything like this. But this town seems quite big in comparison. When I compare this to a map like American Desert, I would generally class as like a small American town. This to me looks a hell of a lot bigger, but then again, there are a few pictures here that definitely throw it off. So, this map is set, as it says, in the stunning mountainous landscape of Alaska, and specifically, players will be battling for control over a small Alaskan town and its imminent surroundings. So, for me, that means there's not going to be a lot of landscape. There's going to be a lot of nice landscape to look at, but obviously the main focus is going to be the town. So when I look at this picture, I feel a little bit deceived. It kind of reminds me of the picture on American Desert when they did the devblog, which was way over near like the big pond, like past the pond, where you can go, but there's literally no point in going over there because you're so far away from everything else. But the picture here, we have what seems to be an old destroyed highway, and then we have some landscape, and then we have like the urbanized area. And the emphasis of the whole article is on this urbanized area. But then we have a few pictures which, look at this. What has this got to do with the urbanized area? Instead, this seems to be the only real picture that we can see, which, in my opinion, shows the full-on battlefield. So we do have some large buildings, which look like either office buildings or apartment blocks. Then we have some small places, which obviously are heavily Americanized. And Alaska is always an interesting place to talk about, because it's one of those areas which is heavily contested. I remember over the years, you would hear funny things from American presidents, such as, the Russians are going to invade over Alaska. And obviously there was the deals done about Alaska back in the day, before it was actually seen as, it had a lot of prosperity in it when it came to its economics. But generally, it's a weird and wonderful place where odd things happen. And I find that, as a person who right now is living in Canada, to definitely resonate with me. But when we look at this map, what we see is something that is incredibly similar to American Desert, and it talks about this idea in this area here. So the main focus taking place on this location will be centered around the strategic zone situated within the city itself. So they're going to force people to fight in the city, but they are going to leave the outer areas for you to use. Now this just means that people are going to spawn camp, like it's as simple as that. Depending on the battle type, players may find themselves contesting ground on either the town's more open outskirts, where lighter vehicles and tank destroyers can especially benefit. No, just high-tier tanks. Anyway, from better visibility and longer engagement distances, or the city center itself, where the more frantic close-quarters engagements will take place, more suitable for heavy brawlers. Okay, well, unfortunately, the these ideas, like in World of Tanks, make sense because you can trade health for, you can trade health for position, and you can trade health for damage. So the heavy brawlers going to one area kind of makes sense. In War Thunder, when you have medium tanks running around, being able to one-shot the majority of heavies that they face, or tank destroyers being at inherent advantages because of no artillery or no turrets, these ideas don't work as well in War Thunder. But then again, I don't really know what ideas do when it comes to these ideas. For me, the inherent issue already, looking at this map, is going to be the fact that people are just going to go around. One of the biggest issues with Volokholamsk is the hill in the north, and also the area in the south around the railway, because you can sit behind the railway, wait for everybody to pass, and then just kill them all and then move on. Same with the hill in the north. You can just sit on that hill and you can see 2 whole points if you are just sat in the trees. And what this means is you can control the map from one single position. Now, what is looking nice, and what is nice about urbanized zones, is the fact that you do have a lot of physical obstacles in the way of people trying to snipe into areas. So you can see in pictures like this, you have the high buildings, and even the buildings themselves, which will get in the way of people trying to snipe through it. So there also seems to be some kind of inclination into the town itself. And what this means is you can't just sit back here and snipe into it. So there is the highway, though, so maybe you can do something. But at least from this picture, at least from this angle, you cannot sit down here and try and snipe into the town. This does give artificial cover for people who have good turrets, though, but still, it's good. It's much better. If you're going to design a map, in my opinion, it's much better to design it so you're on a slight hill, and then the peak of the hill is in the center, instead of a valley like we have on the 38th parallel, because then you just end up with 2 sides trying to snipe each other, and anyone who goes forward after the first 2 minutes gets banged out, especially at high tier, with the high maneuverability and high stabilization of the guns. But going back to this picture, when we talk about heavies, fighting down these environments, we had the same thing talked about in American Desert. Now, the reason why this doesn't really work in American Desert is because it's very, very easy to get from one street to another because of the large areas between them and the multiple paths. I see exactly the same thing on this map because it's an American setting. And I don't mean this like in a derogatory way, but you guys have huge roads and you guys have huge areas. If you compare even this Alaskan place to a street in a city near where I grew up, or a town especially where I grew up, first of all, you wouldn't see any, high-line skyscrapers or large buildings like this, and the roads would be half the size because these pavements are absolutely huge. So what you would have to do is cut the pavements, push the buildings more together, and then put them more in lines, and that would cut these open spaces that you see here, 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 and even here, meaning that, and even here. So this would mean that heavy tanks would actually have to fight down a road, and it would be more of a stalemate until somebody could actually angle or, shoot the correct spot on the front, because every heavy tank does have a weak spot here and there. So that, to me, would be a lot more fun than this, where, yes, it does give you a lot of it does give you a lot of ideas for being able to go around the enemy, in, as I said, in areas like this, but at the same time, it makes it so individual battles don't matter as much, because you are constantly worried about people going around your side. American Deserts, as a map, I don't mind too much. I think it does have problems with, it is very snowballing, and once you push like the initial the initial spawn of the enemy, like once you take that out and then move on, you can have issues definitely on the map. But from this map here, what I see is kind of, it could happen the same way. But the main issue I have with American Desert is how easy it is to go around the enemy when they have a place locked down. And that sounds a little bit counterintuitive because you want to give people as many options as possible to be able to get back in the fight. But at the same time, if it's a town map, for me, town maps should be urban. They should be heavy tank alley. They should be, areas where you can just kind of hunker down and stay. But on these American maps, there's tons of space. And I think it would just be much nicer if we saw some kind of European map. Maybe you could even do something like the streets of London if you wanted to. But I've talked about in the past the idea, and I still hold to this idea. And this map is kind of getting there, because you have it not annihilated. I like the idea of a pre-blown up Berlin map, or a pre-World War II London map, or something like that. I think for me, that would be really cool. It would be something that I could look forward to playing a lot. And it's because it's nice to see stuff when it's not annihilated. So in that respect, I'm very happy that we've picked Alaska, because obviously I don't think there's been major wars in Alaska. At least I don't think so. I can't really remember. But at the same time, what is the issue with Alaska? The colors of Alaska are quite dull. When you go to a place like Rome, there are very, very bright, contrasted houses. Look at a map like, I've forgotten its name. Maginot Line, right? Maginot Line, which is on the border of France, and Belgium, and also the Ardennes, that area in the northeast of France. You have a lot of houses which have a lot of colour to them. You have a lot of pizzazz. It looks really nice. Same with Italy. You have a lot of colour going on, and it's beautiful. Whereas this, it looks murky. It looks grey and brown and, sludgy. And a lot of games in the past have got a lot of criticism for using this colour palette. Now, I think it's okay having a few maps like this. And maybe it's just the issue because it's, cloudy in the game. I personally have never really liked the clouds in the game. When it comes to taking pictures, I much prefer this, where you can actually see green and you can see different colours. But it seems to be like a theme, when it comes to these urbanized zones where we have a bunch of clouds. It's more smoky, all of this stuff. But once again, just going back to a point I was talking about, look how wide this road is. Look how much space. There's so much space for opportunities here, but that destroys the idea of heavy tank urban combat. It annihilates it. Instead of a meat grinder, which, you would want it to be, now, instead, you can sit here, you can go here, you can go here, you can go there, you can go all the way around easily. It's too... it's weird to say, but if you're trying to make a map which is favoring heavy tanks, which is kind of hard to do in this game, because as I've said before, a lot of medium tanks have the insane capability of killing heavy tanks very easily. There's only a few heavy tanks that can actually use their armor effectively. Then what you end up with is you need more of a map with smaller streets. You need something which is not as open. Otherwise, you're just going to get popped, or just, they're going to flank you and you're going to get annihilated. One thing I am definitely interested in, though, is this picture. This picture could change the whole map. And hopefully, we get to see it on the dev server soon, and we'll be able to go around it. But one of the things is, it says that this is obviously centralized around the town. But when I look at that picture, and when I look at this picture, and when I look at this picture, these areas look like they're miles away from any town. And if that's the case, how far are you able to flank? How long is it going to take you to be able to go around? And if it's quite a long time, then maybe it won't even be worth it, going around the side. But at the same time, you could just have people in incredibly fast tanks go around and just spawn camp. And this is the inherent issue with unlocking a map, right? This is, I believe this is probably why people don't like the larger maps. I'm a fan of the larger maps, you know. I don't mind Volkolamsk. I think it's got a lot of positions which are really interesting and really fun to use. Kursk, I think it's fine, you know. I still don't like the fact that it's just two hills trying to smash each other, and how one point is inherent, you know, the fact that you can sit in one position and move 20 meters and cover all 3 points, that's a little bit of an issue. The Fulda Gap, I think, is a great map. It's a lot of fun. And then Vietnam, I think, gets blasted hard for what it is. But then again, every time a map ever comes out in War Thunder, people blast it hard for what it is. So, I mean, it is just how it is. I can't remember, when was the last map that people did not have a go at? When was the last map that people were not negative about? That's a question. Because I think actually, yeah, I think I know the answer. The aerialistic maps, because nobody noticed that they added in, like, Operation, what was it, Iskaru or Iskara, and then France 1944. Like, no, I don't think anybody noticed that they actually added those in. So, yeah, let's go for those, even though they were really cool and interesting innovations on the aerialistic formula. But yeah, so we have another location. It is once again American, which is fine. You know, we're going more and more into a modern day, and modern day is Americanized. I think it is safe to say that. America is one of the hegemons of the world, if not the hegemon in the Western world. It makes sense to support them well, not support them, but it makes sense for the game to take more of an American slant. And I do like this idea of fighting in areas which aren't fully designed for war, or more fictional areas, let's say. And on top of this, I do like the idea of these urbanized areas. I just wish personally it was in either a town or a city that I personally am more used to, and also has smaller streets, just for the fact that we can have proper urbanized combat. Hopefully that comes soon, and it will have to be a European map, because American roads are just too wide. You know, it's nice having your Dodge Rams, it's nice having your big Ford pickups, but when it comes to tank-and-tank combat, that just makes everything too big when it comes to one-on-one confrontations. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.